Hello, namaskar and a very good evening to all the viewers watching our sessions out there. This is Simran Singh and you are watching this particular session on eVidya channel number 6 to 12. Well, we have so many different mediums through which you all can connect with us, and one of them is our YouTube channel that you all are well aware of. It is NCRT official. So it's around 4 p.m. on your watch, and regularly from 4 to 5 p.m. we come up with our special sessions for all of you. So once again, allow me to welcome you in the first day of our online training based on accessible digital resources and assistive technologies. So we have our 5 days online training program right from 21st of November. We have started it, that is from today till 25th of November at this particular timing for all our viewers. So we are going to get a lot of information associated with accessible digital content, policy perspectives, the scope regarding digital resources, universal design for learning, assistive technology, developing design, digital resources for CwSN and a lot more. So in our live interactive sessions, if you have any of the queries, you would like to know anything during our live interactive sessions, then feel free to write down to us at this mail ID that is flashing on your screens. Our mail ID is right there on your screens. It is training.helpdesk@ciet.nic.in. Besides, we also have our contact number for all of you. You may give us a call at 8800440559. As you all know that NEP 2020's vision for educational technology recognizes that new technology will not only change what students will learn, but it will also lead to a big change in how they learn it. That is, enhancing our classroom experiences, and the technological interventions will also improve teaching, learning, evaluation processes, teacher preparation, professional development, and much more. And when we talk about accessible digital content, it becomes very essential for the education of children with special needs, especially in an inclusive classroom setup. So today our topic of discussion is accessible digital content, and we'll providing you more guidelines on policy perspectives and the scope. So sharing more details on this subject, we are also joined by our esteemed panelists. So allow me to introduce you with our today's guest. In the conversation right here in the studio, I have with us Dr. Bharti Kaushik ma'am. Namaskar ma'am.
Namaskar.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We welcome you in the conversation, and ma'am is serving as a head at DICT and TD from CIET NCRT. Then we also have another expert who has connected with us through online modality, Professor Varsha Gattu ma'am. Namaskar ma'am.
Namaste.
Good evening ma'am.
Good evening.
Ma'am is a senior research Fulbright fellow with a cross-functional experience of over 3 decades in special and inclusive education. She has been the head of the department education at AYJ, National Institute of Speech and Hearing Disabilities, under the DEPWD of Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Government of India. Ma'am, we are honored to have you in this conversation with us. So all the viewers who have connected with us in this live interactive session, in this training program, you all know the different mediums through which you can connect with us and keep on writing to us about your thoughts, your feedback and your queries. So let's begin our conversation on the first day of our online training regarding accessible digital content, policy perspectives and its scope. So in the first place, I'll request Bharti ma'am to throw more light on today's training program and what are we going to discuss in this session.
Okay. So, as the theme goes, it's accessible digital resources and assistive technologies. It will be a 5-day series. So, series 1 we are beginning with becoming familiar with what National Education Policy 2020 recommends about assistive digital technologies and accessible digital content. So, let's see what the policy says about it. So, I am going to share the PPT. I hope it's visible on the, yes, this is it. So, the very first thing, as the National Education Policy 2020 recommends regarding digital technologies, it says extensive use of technology in education, and during pandemic we have seen, we all have gone through the experience of sudden shift of schools from offline mode to online mode. So, learnings from that, NEP also recommends that we have to extensively make use of available technology solutions for all levels of education, not restricting only to the school education. And when we are making extensive use of technologies, then we have to take care that the language doesn't create a barrier. Say for example, my PPT right now, the text is written in English, but if the audience are from Tamil or from Malayalam zone and they do not understand English, then there might be some ICT solution available that converts English content into their native language which they want to prefer to hear and use the content in, and that too based on the ICT solutions. And third recommendation of NEP is we have to enhance the access for Divyang students. Now, who are the Divyang students? Divyang students are the one who come from any disability or disadvantaged background. When I say disability background, RPWD Act 2016, Right of Persons with Disability Act 2016 recognizes 21 different conditions of disabilities ranging from sensory disabilities to intellectual development disabilities to mental illness to neurological chronic conditions to blood disorders as well. And it also includes dwarfism also as one of the main disability conditions. And NEP 2020 recognizes disadvantages in terms of the regionality, in terms of belongingness to economical condition, in terms of belongingness to a particular gender including the transgender as well. So, coming back to the PPT, the point number 4, the NEP also recommends languages for students living in remote areas and also for Divyang students. So, both disability and disadvantages needs to be covered from the ICT perspective. Fifth is not only from the students perspective, the teaching learning e-content will continue to be developed in all regional languages by the apex organizations like NCRT, CIET, CBSE, NIOS and other bodies like state bodies of education, state teacher training institutions, and not to ignore here the organizations, IT organizations who have shown keen interest in creating content for education. Now, going on, NEP also suggests that portals like Diksha and Swim will be better integrated across schools and higher education, and they will include ratings, reviews by users, because we also get on and off feedback for usage of Diksha when we interact with stakeholders like teachers, teacher educators through various training workshops or the webinars, just like that we are experiencing that many of the portals the content is not easily accessible. So, one of the recommendations of NEP 2020 is each of the portals or the app which is to be used for the purpose of education needs to have inbuilt user feedback mechanism and should also have the provision of seeking user ratings and user usage rating related, and this is mentioned in section 23.6 of NEP 2020. Then 24.4 point J of NEP 2020 mentioned as point 7 in the PPT says many standards for developing content in technology and pedagogy will be laid out for e-learning by state board, schools and other apex organization, and this could be for blended learning or 100% online learning as well. And in this series, one of the guidelines that has been developed by CIT is Pragyata guidelines for development of e-content. We will be covering about Pragyata guidelines in the sessions that are yet to come. And 8th point, NEP recommendation is related to section 24.46, which says schools need to develop smart classrooms for the usage of digital pedagogy. Now, mind you, here the NEP doesn't say that the digital classrooms or smart classrooms need to transact only through 100% online mode, because post pandemic era many of the schools have adopted the blended learning modalities wherein some classes are in the online mode and some classes in the offline mode. And then another point says teachers will undergo rigorous training in learner centric pedagogy and how to become high quality online content creators. The webinar series which teaches you to use ICT effectively basically has sessions from 4 to 5, and they empower the viewers and participants to use ICT solutions and apps like Cohort, like Canva, to create the content digitally which is accessible for all. So these are few of the recommendations of NEP 2020 regarding usage of ICT in education, and how to, what aspects, what all points need to be kept in mind while designing the content digitally, so that each and every learner sitting in the classroom is able to interact with the content.
So thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing these necessary and minute details in the context of NEP 2020 regarding our today's topic. Thanks a lot. So viewers, in the conversation we also have with us Professor Varsha Gattu, ma'am. So ma'am, here I invite you in this conversation, and I request you to please inform our viewers more regarding the scope of digital technologies and also the e-content guidelines associated with the children with special needs.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Behra, and thank you, Dr. Bharati, for having me here. Can I have my slides, please? Hello?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, you may start with the introduction. We'll be having them on the screen.
Yeah. So, Dr. Bharati has already set the tone for, the provisions of NEP 2020, which has title of equity and inclusivity in the education system. So, keeping in line with the provisions of NEP 2020, why we include, as we know that inclusion is the policy perspective, and inclusion has been endorsed in all of the policies, whether it is financial policy, whether it is digital policy, or whether it is the new education policy, that is the NEP 2020. So I'll go on to the next slide, please. Why have access to education? Because this is what is the key word of these 5-day training programs. What do we really mean by access? Is access just the enrollment in the schools, or is access means the the road to the knowledge and understanding what has been taught in the schools? So here are the 3 pictures that I have put, and these are my favorite ones, because these have been drawn by the children with disabilities themselves. Uh, just take a minute, pause and think. Is inclusive, or is inclusion in education, which is especially, I'm talking in respect to children with disabilities, it is just enrollment in the class? Is it belongingness, as Bharti ji said that in NEP 2020 these 3 words are highlighted? Or it is, the story of the stork and the fox, that he cannot drink the porridge or the kheer from it because it's not designed the way he or she can eat it or gain the knowledge. In the second picture, you see the crow, probably the beak is little bit damaged, and or maybe the crow is tired of waiting for the pebbles to go down and water level to rise up. Here comes the use of technology. So whatever is locally and cost effective use, does access to education also raise the bar of self-esteem, that I am not just sitting in the class, it is not something that I am just getting concessions after concessions, but it is something by which if I have gained knowledge, then I can excel like all other children. In the story of hare and tortoise, as we know, the story always goes that खरगोश सो जाता है और वो सोता है इसीलिए कछुआ जीत जाता है. So it is like riding on the back of somebody which is less able than us. So in order to counter that, we see these stories have been tweaked a bit so that the tortoise is empowered and he wins the race on his own strength, and that joy of excellence is very good. So access to education has all these hidden things in it, and I feel that the technology and the digital technology, especially what Bharti ji said, that the pandemic has taught us many things, and one of the blessings in disguise was this access to education which children with disabilities had. Can I have the next slide, please? Yeah, so I'll quickly go through why equitable inclusive practices, what are the universal needs and the roadblocks, specific learning needs of children with disabilities, and how does the digital resource really take them the way forward? Because if you use technology in the class, it is not something which benefits only children with disabilities, but it helps all children in the classroom. But most importantly is addressing the universal learning needs which children with disabilities are facing in the classrooms today. The next slide, please. You must have seen this picture 100 times, I know. Whenever somebody talks of inclusive education and equity and participation, we all have this picture. I'm using it from the perspective of digital resources and technology, because when we say equity in education, let us look at it. Is it giving the, what does equal mean? Giving everybody the same. Okay, so the same textbooks are given, it is equal. If one has see the fairness of the inclusivity, then okay, the teacher reduces the time of some students in the classroom and gives additional time to some of the children. But then that's also not correct. But if we remove all the barriers in education, and if you recollect the message what the three pictures gave you in the previous slides, belongingness, self-esteem, and excellence, then it becomes a just philosophy, just practice in education. So is equity meaning giving everybody what he or she wants? It's like the cafeteria approach, the buffet thing that we took. So you take in whatever you can and what is needed for you. So equitable inclusive practices is the mandate of the Act policy. Yes, it is the sustainable development goal. It benefits all children, and most effective, it is the cost effectiveness of the digital technology, because whatever you write or whatever you make photocopies of the things, that you need not do. The ICT can be used at any time and any place, and it can also go on for any number of hours that the child is spending for education. The next slide, please. Talking of the universal needs of children in the classroom, I feel the Maslow's law of motivation is the most relevant one, because unless and until we address all these needs, the self actualization does not really happen. First and foremost, the children have to have a barrier-free environment. That is, in the classroom, if the child's physical needs are met, and these physical needs are like, for example, there is a child with low vision in the class, or a child with sensory disabilities, like the hearing loss in the class. First of all, the classroom has to be noise free, or the classroom's reflective surfaces have to be reduced. But at the same time, even if you are using a digital technology like the PowerPoint presentation, one has to see whether the font size is okay, the color, the contrast is okay, whether for a child with hearing loss there is a captioning underneath the things, or you give some narration of your videos or presentation, or an insert of sign language in the box. So these are exactly the physical needs of a child with disability. unless and until that is met, the child will not feel safe in the class. वो डरा डरा सा रहेगा, because उसको लगेगा टीचर जो पढ़ा रही है वो अगर मुझे समझ में नहीं आया तो मैं जवाब कैसे दूंगा. So if I am not able to answer in the class, then maybe I will fall behind. So the speech to text or text to speech kind of a technology really makes the child safe. When comes next comes the belongingness in the class. So if things are made easier for this child, because if a child with physical disability, for example, is not able to write all answers, he or she is given the the keyboard to type out the answer. The child also feels, oh, I'm not just riding on the shoulder of यानी सिर्फ मैं कंसेशंस के आधार पे नहीं कर रहा हूँ, मैं औरों की तरह भी मैं अपने आंसर्स लिख सकता हूँ. That automatically gives self-esteem and leads to self-actualization. So friends, ICT and the use of digital technology has got very great, it follows the same ladder as the ladder of Maslow's motivational need. The next slide, please. So, as we know, there are universal, the needs of all the children. There are universal roadblocks also. It's not just for children with disabilities. यानी सिर्फ जो दिव्यांग बच्चे हैं उन्हीं को ये प्रॉब्लम्स है, ऐसे नहीं है. सभी बच्चों को स्कूल में आने के वक्त स्ट्रेस होता है. मेरी होमवर्क की कॉपी घर पे तो नहीं छूट गई है, या मेरा कंपास बॉक्स तो घर में छूट नहीं गया है. सो अगर ऐसा स्ट्रेस रहा, या मेरे को क्लास में टेस्ट है और मैं कंप्लीट नहीं कर पाया, तो वो फियर ऑफ फेलियर होता है. So all these things can be very well addressed through, the digital technology. Like homework can be uploaded from the home itself by the parents to the teacher. So दूसरे दिन नोटबुक का टेंशन नहीं है बच्चों को. बहुत बार there is a mismatch in the class, what the way the teacher is teaching and the way this child can answer. All these things leads to lack of confidence, self-efficacy, motivation, because the content की accessibility का problem है, and most importantly the pedagogy of still the chalk and talk method or still the lecture method is way beyond the most of the children. I am not saying just the children with disabilities. So the next slide. So specific issues क्या होते हैं class में of children with disabilities is, and I've purposely put some of the icons like that, because it will help you all to realize that uh, uh, making lessons is so easier, because they say no, a picture is equal to 1,000 words which are printed or spoken. तो अगर आपने ऐसे सिंबॉलिक पिक्चर्स डाले तो बच्चों को जो मैसेज पहुंचने का है वो बहुत अच्छे से पहुंचता है. एंड दिस इज क्वाइट पॉसिबल विद द यूज ऑफ डिजिटल रिसोर्सेज. सो एक्सेस, दरवाजा बंद है किस चीज का, तो नॉलेज का दरवाजा बंद है. वी हैव टू नॉक नॉक नॉक, ओपन द डोर, break the shackles of this door, and this is where the technology makes things very easy. जो चिल्ड्रन विद डिसेबिलिटीज हैं, अगर उन्हें क्लास में समझ में नहीं आया तो दे टेक ऑफ. इट हैपेंस विद अस आल्सो. अगर हमें लेक्चर समझ में नहीं आया या बोरिंग लगा तो हम लोग भी तो स्विच ऑफ करके कहीं और काम करने में जुट जाते हैं. बच्चे भी धीरे धीरे इंटरेस्ट लूज करते हैं, दे ड्रॉप आउट ऑफ स्कूल. This is what is said in the NEP 2020, that for sustaining education, it's not just access, but sustaining education, this digital technology can be made use of. The other thing is also raising the bar, as I'm again and again reminding you of the hare and the tortoise, that we have to raise the bar of all children in the class. And here comes the use, because whether you take the instructional design in the class or whether you take the assessment in the class, assessment or इसमें भी if the the portfolio assessment or you make something where the children you have the performance based assessment तो बच्चे अपने आप इवन पावर पॉइंट प्रेजेंटेशन बना सकते हैं गूगल फॉर्म्स में टिक मार्क कर सकते हैं और these are very very small things that I am telling you but there are so many advanced things that one can do through digital technology. The next slide. So, what actually are the impediments in the class where the digital resources are used? First is communication, and you know that a class में teacher जो घूम घूम कर पढ़ाती हैं, that is the teacher movements are very distracting not just for children with disabilities because उन्हें ओष्ठ वाचन करना होता है, स्पीच रीडिंग करना होता है, टीचर दूर जाकर खड़ी होकर बात करेगी तो साउंड की इंटेंसिटी कम हो जाती है. ब्लैक बोर्ड वर्क हम लोग कहीं पे भी लिखते हैं क्लास में देयर इज some we have all undergone teacher education thing but still the blackboard work is always not very neatly done. The textbooks sometimes are inaccessible because maybe the children बच्चों का reading level उतना पहुंचा हुआ नहीं रहता है and children with low vision or blind children उनको अगर ब्रेल की किताबें नहीं मिली तो उन्हें समझ में नहीं आता है. सो इन अ नटशेल इट्स नॉट जस्ट द loss which creates a problem in the children but our own traditional style or the pedagogy which is followed in the classroom is becomes a roadblock for the children. So how do we do that? We should realize this that there are differing needs and different speeds of all children. So if you sort of say that okay I am going to finish this lesson in this hour and this is my syllabus, this is my conspectus, तो सभी बच्चे वो ही स्पीड से पढ़ेंगे ऐसा नहीं है because there is a lot of heterogeneity in your classrooms. There are what we nowadays don't call it as learning styles but we call as learning preferences. I would like to share just an example that people feel sometimes that जो deaf बच्चे हैं वो हमेशा visuals ही prefer करते हैं. So we had a small study where we saw that they in fact prefer sometimes an auditory mode also. So बच्चों का preference क्या है? Whether they want really a visual presentation or they are very happy with a mix of audio or visual. So it all depends and we sometimes bracket all the children. So you can see the two birds that they might look similar but they may be poles apart. So बच्चों की cognitive styles अलग अलग हो सकती हैं. So if we have to address the different needs and different speeds, एक टीचर को क्लास में 30 बच्चों को पढ़ाने के लिए ये सब करना तभी possible होगा if she uses the digital technology because the lessons can be shared at home, the stories can be shared at home and the child at his or her own pace can go through the lessons. Maybe it's a science lesson, maybe it's a poem which is to be recited the next day. So everything the child can do as per his or her speeds. The next slide. NEP 2020, as Simran said also just now, it talks about more than the content, it is the process which is important. So अगर बच्चों को नॉलेज एक्वायर करना है तो सिर्फ हम किताबों का नॉलेज पोर करके काम नहीं चलेगा. बच्चे उसको कैसा समझते हैं यानी हाउ इज द प्रोसेस. फॉर एग्जाम्पल इफ इट इज इवन सिंपल एडिशन एंड सब्सट्रैक्शन the children should know all these steps for which each and every child requires time to absorb the things. Multiple means of representation, expression and engagement जो UDL में होता है बार बार वो बच्चा जब प्रैक्टिस करेगा और बार बार वो अलग अलग तरीकों से वो नॉलेज रिप्रेजेंट करेगा तभी उसका कॉन्सेप्ट क्लियर होगा. So whether it is in grammar, whether it is singular and plural that you are teaching, or whether you are teaching a science lesson of an experiment, how are the concepts of floating and sinking if you are this thing, same thing as I said, rather than just mugging up which are the living and non-living things. If the child really goes through the process of classification, bifurcation of like which are the things which what are the characteristics of living things and why does this particular thing is a living and a non-living thing, ये process wise सीखेगा तो वो knowledge perfect रहेगा. Next slide. So what is that we have to do? We all have followed the tree kind of an approach, that is social justice, one way of teaching. Or you said that okay, some of the children are not class में नहीं सीख पाएंगे, इनको special education में भेजना है, so because they are SCDGs, so this will not take us to the real inclusive practices. What we really need today is a socially just pedagogy, which is the rhizomatic learning, and this rhizomatic learning is nothing but the use of the digital technology, because it is one link taking you to another hyperlink. वहाँ पे आप क्लिक करो तो आपको दूसरा लिंक ओपन होगा. So there is like a complete network of things. As you require, things are available. I would like to congratulate NCRT under Professor Anupam Ahuja and Professor Behra. They have done such a lot of work in terms of e-learning, and the guidelines are available on the website of the Diksha and ministry, that we all as a team of disability experts have worked for these guidelines for developing e-content for children with disabilities, and there are plenty of resources which can be used for making the content accessible to the children. So please go through these guidelines which are there. The next slide, please. These guidelines, I have purposely put that picture of the sustainability, because अगर चिल्ड्रन विद डिसेबिलिटीज को क्लास में सस्टेन होना है और उन्हें एक्सेल करना है, तो some of the essential components which are disability specific are given in these e-content guidelines. कुछ इंटरनेशनल स्टैंडर्ड्स हैं और गाइडलाइंस हैं फॉर मेकिंग वेब डिजाइनिंग, और द गाइडलाइंस फॉर द फॉन्ट एक्सेट्रा, कलर कॉन्ट्रास्टिंग, ये भी इस गाइडलाइन का हिस्सा है. गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया की गाइडलाइंस जो है अबाउट एक्सेसिबिलिटी एंड डिजिटल कंटेंट, वो भी इन गाइडलाइंस में है. एंड वी हैव गिवन एडाप्टेशंस ऑफ how to make the printed material accessible to children with disabilities using for the digital technology. Disability wise, there are sections and there are also exemplars. One of the exemplar of hearing impairment, I have just put it in 2 slides. So the e-content for the deaf and hard of hearing is a section which I have edited and facilitated in this book. We have made it into section wise, as the NEP has said, that is the foundational years, preparatory, secondary and higher secondary classrooms. So with examples we have given as to what are the challenges for children with hearing loss or other disabilities and how to overcome them. So actually there are 2 books which are developed by NCRT. One is the e-content guidelines, and the second part of it was what are the resources available in the market, readily available, or what can the teachers do, like the flip book how she can do, और जो available technology है, for example phonic games हैं, तो उसके लिए क्या छोटे छोटे adaptations करने हैं. So we have given tips and solutions also for using the e-content, like कैसे language simple होनी चाहिए, clear होनी चाहिए, background noise का reduction होना चाहिए, high quality clear audio कैसे बनाना है, and then captions, which is so important for children with hearing loss, and for that matter for all children I feel. So closed and open captioning है, subtitling है, transcripts कैसे लिखना चाहिए. We have also given the site where NCRT's books and the videos developed by NCRT and ISLRTC have been uploaded, which is of the textbooks. The next slide. Most important is, yeah, I have already covered this. The next slide. We have also given a list of free apps which are available, and these apps could be used by teachers for that is the like for real time captioning, etc., or it is the ear booster or cochlear hope words. So these are all the apps which parents can also download or teachers in their classroom. I'll come to the end of my presentation with a small this thing, the last slide please. So we have to cater to all the children in the class. So disability is a human diversity, they say, and it is very dynamic, meaning वो कभी भी किसी को भी हो सकती है. So it is not something that some children are born this way, so you know they have to be catered to a special way. I feel the disability is not to be seen as a problem. It is not the disability which creates a problem, but the accessibility is problem. So if accessibility is provided, then we bridge the gap between the haves and have-nots, and that is the potential of the digital resources. Thank you very much, and thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for being with us in this conversation and sharing the valuable inputs and insights from your end, from the extensive experience that you have in this particular field. Thanks a lot. So I am also delighted to inform all our viewers that in the conversation we have with us Joint Director at CIT NCRT, Professor Amrinder Behra sir. Namaskar sir. Professor Behra.
Namaskar.
Namaskar sir. Good evening.
Can you hear me?
Yes sir. You are clearly audible to us.
Visible also.
And sir, clearly visible as well. We'll request you to address our viewers more regarding accessible digital content, the policy perspectives and the scope that we are discussing in today's conversation.
Thank you very much, Simran. A very good afternoon, good evening to all of you. My dear colleague there, Dr. Bharti, who heads the Department of ICT and Training in CIT, and distinguished resource persons. As all of us, we are discussing that how a variety of digital contents can be created so that it can be accessible for the differently able learners. And the policy perspective also, and some of the provisions which have already been made has already been made clear. And even the NEP 2020 which has been started implementing across the country by all the stakeholders talks a lot about integrating the concerns related to children with special needs, and also it talks about holistic development by all the learners, so including the differently able learners and the disabled. Actually, the RPWD Act has already identified around 21 different variety of disabilities, but we, being the stakeholders, need to create a lot of resources and approaches which address their concern in the classroom. Even my team also, the resource team, and Dr. Bharti did mention about the Prasast mobile app which has recently been launched by Honorable Minister of Education, which helps us to assess the children at an early age, what is their need and how that can be addressed. So early identification of disability is the key. These are the things we, being the teachers and teacher educators, we need to keep in mind and take it further also, so that every child spread across the country in different classrooms gets adequate attention, since they have the birthright to get equitable quality education, a comparable quality of education. Not only that our policy NEP 2020 is saying, but also the Sustainable Development Goal 4 talks about equitable quality education and lifelong learning. And besides that, NCRT has taken up few initiatives which my colleagues have already mentioned. I will not be repeating those, but I request all the stakeholders who are part of this program watching us to take this into consideration, that no two individuals are alike. Even identical twins also, they differ in many ways. So we should keep that in mind, and accordingly design the pedagogic approaches and use assistive technologies so that every child gets the required attention and the equitable quality education is achieved by every child. Even for tracking the children, that whether they are learning it coming to the school, if they have registered, they have undergone with a pedagogical process through the Vidya Samiksha Kendra. Even states are also taking forward the initiative to set up Vidya Samiksha Kendra in respective states. So that will help us to have a track of different variety of children in the system and how they are progressing in learning and what kind of support they require. Similarly, NCERT has come out with a booklet called Priya the Accessibility Warrior, which also talks about different accessibility issues in the system. So we being the stakeholders needs to take care of that in mind and also take the system forward. With these words, I thank all of you for being part and parcel of this program and also be with us all these 5 days and try to understand the nitty-gritties related to the theme and help those children to achieve comparable quality. Thank you, quality of education. Thank you very much. Over to Simran.
Thank you so much, sir, for the precious time and the valuable information that you have shared with all our viewers. I am pretty sure that all the viewers watching this session will take a note of the important areas that we have discussed in the conversation. And here I am delighted to inform you that so many viewers have connected with us through the comment section and so many beautiful comments are pouring in the comment section, and we have our training sessions for another 4 days as well. So towards the last 5 minutes, very quickly, ma'am, I would request you to discuss on the way ahead in the digital technology.
Okay, so the way ahead for digital technologies and digital accessible resources is that whatever the content we are preparing and using in our classrooms needs to be reflected upon. Is it reaching to the last child sitting in my classroom? Is it meeting the spatial needs irrespective of its origin, like whether it is originating from the disability perspective or it is originating due to disadvantages, then be it social disadvantages, economic disadvantages, disadvantage due to regionalities, disadvantage due to educational backlog. So whatever may be the cause of spatial needs, whether the digital content used by me to supplement my teaching learning is accessible for all. And whenever I am saying accessibility, or whenever the experts, Professor Varsha ji and Professor Behra has mentioned accessibility, it means accessibility, affordability, acceptability, quality as well as interoperability. So way ahead gives me few pointers, like I need to create barrier free, easy access, affordable, interoperable digital content, number one. I have to, number two, train the teachers as well as all my students to easily engage with the digital content that I have prepared. Number three, I have to collaborate with various agencies, collaborate with my students as well to produce the content. Many a times, student created content has surprised us all adults because they understand their needs well and they come out with bright, brilliant, creative solutions for an existing problems. So we have to give ears to the students' voices. And then whatever technology that we are using, please try to give voice to the local solutions, and then these local solutions needs to find space in upscaling as well as in reaching to the global audience. And then I would like to end my deliberations with two things. The very first thing is, please always remember, for most people, technology makes things easier, but for people with disabilities, technology makes things possible. The example here that I would like to give, who might have thought the video calling feature will empower the deaf community to connect with each other through sign language. They switch on the video calling mode and they talk to each other through sign language. And it's such a beautiful experience to see two deaf people talking to each other in sign language using the video calling feature. And now, since this entire series is related to assistive technologies, let's assume a blind person is in unfamiliar surroundings and there might be nobody else to help him or her out. So how does this person will go about doing his or her task in an unfamiliar situation? You'll be surprised to know there is an app available on Android store which is called Be My Eyes, B-E-B-M-Y, My E-Y-E-S, Eyes. If you install this app on your mobiles, then it gives you option number 1 to register as a volunteer, number 2 you can be connected directly to a volunteer, and once you choose the option of connecting to a volunteer, the app goes into the video call mode wherein whatever is visible in the surrounding of the mobile phone, the volunteer gives its verbal description. It is such a beautifully designed app, very cleverly designed app. So I'll urge all my viewers to kindly register themselves as volunteer for this app. More about these apps in our next session.
Of course, we have another 4 days for our training sessions on accessible digital resources and assistive technologies, and very quickly I would request our viewers to have a look at the website of CIT NCRT, and in case you need to know more about it, all the information you can find over this web page, all the details regarding our sessions and the objectives, who all can participate in the post session activity, in the post session quiz, and the links and the banners and the resource persons along with the topics for each and every day are right there on your screens. And tomorrow we'll discuss more on how we can participate via these 3 steps through the post session activity. But very quickly here, because of paucity of time, I'll take very less moments to thank all the 3 speakers who have been a part of this conversation. Thank you so much, Bharti ma'am. We would like to thank Professor Varsha Gattu madam, of course, Professor Bhera, for being a part of this conversation and guiding the path of our viewers. So stay connected to NCRT and keep watching PM eVidya channels. Now it's time for me to wrap up the first day of our training session, but stay connected and keep watching us for our upcoming session, that is Sahyog. Namaskar.